Angle.
Well, good morning from wherever you are joining us from. Welcome to the Morning Momentum. Today being Monday 7th of October 2024, just a day before Gachagua's impeachment motion is discussed in Parliament. Many Kenyans are waiting to see the direction it will take, and many people are asking what next for the Deputy President. All that will be following up for you, and we'll give you an update on that. But for now, let's take a look at the top stories making the headlines on the papers here on the Morning Momentum. My name is Alfonsoh. I use the hashtag the Morning Momentum at YOUNIB MEDIA TV at Alfonsoh Albakwekwe. Let's start with the Standard. Ruto locks out his friends. Now, rattled by recent political events in the country, President William Ruto, previously an open and affable leader, is tightening control, enforcing strict access protocols, and reshuffling long-serving staff, and allies need permission to see him. That story is beefed up for you on page 8 of the Standard this morning. On page 3, TSC in radical shuffle of its top officials. Also on the Standard this morning, as Gachagua pleads for forgiveness. Definitely yesterday we saw the Deputy President asking for forgiveness, and it is featured on the front page of the Standard this morning, and I quote, "I may have wronged the President. I ask him to forgive me, and to all members of Parliament, if I have wronged you in the performance of my duties, kindly forgive me," end of quote. All that is beefed up for you on the Standard this morning. On page 9, state moves to weed out ghost workers. Now, Public Service Cabinet Secretary Justin Muturi pledged to deploy technology in his grand plan to manage human resources by June next year, a process initiated by the President. On page 6 of the Standard this morning, what it takes to battle 4 cancers. Jane Francis is battling not just one but 4 different types of cancer, each time facing the reality of costly, extensive treatment in her quest to avoid death. That story is beefed up for you on page 6. On world news, why October 7 unnerves Israel leaders. Also on sports news, Manchester United and Chelsea failed to grab 3 points. We'll take a look at that. Lastly, on page 2, when job search goes wrong. Now, what was supposed to be a life-changing opportunity for 3 fishermen has turned out to be a nightmare in a foreign land. We'll take a look at that on page 2. Let's take a look at page 2, how 3 Kenyan fishermen are suffering in foreign detention camps. Now, the fishermen were ensnared in a trap with the promise of 40,000 Kenya shillings salary. They are detained in Madagascar for allegedly fishing illegally in the country's waters. That story is beefed up for you on page 2. On page 3, Kipiegon and governors flag off run to end maternal deaths. About 15 women lose their lives to pregnancy-related complications daily in Kenya. Excessive bleeding after childbirth is the leading cause of mothers' deaths. That story is beefed up for you on page 3. Let's move on and take a look at page 4. Removal motion. Now, has Ruto lost the mountain? What next for the deputy is the big question here on the Standard this morning. The president has been accused by Gachagua's backyard of Mount Kenya of masterminding his ouster from office. The conflict between the 2 leaders has the effect of catapulting the deputy president to the position of Mount Kenya kingpin. Now, as the impeachment motion is set to be discussed tomorrow, all eyes will be on the president, who has been accused by Gachagua's backyard of Mount Kenya of masterminding the motion to oust his deputy from office. And as we have said, we'll be watching out for that story, and we will be keeping you updated. On page 5, Gachagua's charges, similar to those he faced 3 years ago. Now, he is accused of acquiring massive wealth by using his influence to bag tenders from state, just like in 2021. The High Court froze 200 million shillings from his account, but he got back his money immediately after taking the office as the deputy president. More of that story is beefed up for you on page 5. On page 6, please forgive me, Gachagua tells president and Kenyans. Now, the DP is scheduled to appear before the National Assembly to defend himself against accusations. He said he may have wronged the president, parliament, and opponents while performing his duties. That story is beefed up for you on page 6 of the Standard this morning. Let's move on and take a look at page 8. Ruto tightens grip on power, enforces strict access protocols. Now, the president has distanced himself from old allies and reshuffled long-serving staff. Cabinet secretaries, diplomats, and politicians are blocked from meeting Ruto without approval. That story is built up for you on page 8. On page 9 of the Standard this morning, inside state's plan to weed out ghost workers. Now, Public Service Ministry will deploy technology to manage personnel by June 2024. CS Justin Muturi said he will review the human resource development policy. That story is beefed up for you on page 9. Let's move on and take a look at the expert opinion this morning. It's all about the mandate. Now, do whatever you want with the DP, but don't divide Kenyans. That is all in the expert opinion this morning. If the calls of impeachment are followed to their logical end, one thing is certain: the impeachment will be a perfectly executed, mutually assured distraction by the erstwhile political lovebirds, the president and his deputy. Now, a successful impeachment will mean that the deputy president will have to forget about Murima, for he would be effectively extinguished politically. All that is beefed up for you on page 12 of the Standard this morning. Now, on page 14, still on expert opinion, what Kanja should do to give Kenya world-class police service. Now, the nation recently united in congratulating Douglas Kanja on his appointment as the new IG of Kenya Police. Following his successful interviewing and vetting, he assumed office as the 4th IG under the 2010 Constitution and the 14th police boss since Kenya attained independence in 1963. But what should he do to give Kenya a world-class police service? All that is beefed up for you on page 14 of the Standard this morning. Now, on page 15, it's addressing the elephant in the room. Reactions to Gachagua's impeachment bid have shown that Kenya's problems go beyond the DP. Now, public participation forms called to discuss the impeachment of Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua descended into chaotic and dramatic scenes last week. Many Kenyans felt duped and expressed their frustration with the current malice in Kenya Kwanza regime and failure to prioritize citizen-centric issues. More of that is beefed up for you on page 15 of the Standard this morning. Let's move on and take a look at county news. Now, Western and Rift Valley regions benefit from 34 billion shillings water projects. Water agency says it plans to use the funds to implement gravity-fed water schemes. Principal Secretary for Water has encouraged counties to develop water master plans. That story is beefed up for you on page 16 of the Standard this morning. In Migori County, sanitary pads plant a relief for young girls, says Ida Odinga. A manufacturing plant for sanitary pads has been established in Migori town. Launching the factory, Ida Odinga, the wife to ODM leader Raila Odinga, said the facility will go a long way in ensuring that girls from vulnerable families can access sanitary pads. In Nairobi County, PS says school census will bridge data gaps in education sector. So the process of collecting data for 2024 National School Census is complete, and focus now shifts to analysis, which will ultimately guide planning of the education sector. More of that is beefed up for you on page 16. In today's article of Health and Science, what is Kenya's healthcare system, is what is comprehensively covered for you. Let's move on and take a look at more county news. Audit reveals deep flows into Taita Taveta County Education Fund. Now, the Auditor General has raised concerns over high default rates, cash flow problems, and mismanagement. The initiative is modeled after the Higher Education Loans Board. That story is beefed up for you on page 17. In Kericho County, T-Board tackles weighing scandals. The T-Board of Kenya, TBK, has intervened into widespread malpractice at tea collection points where unscrupulous clerks have been accused of underweighing tea leaves delivered by farmers before transportation to factories for processing. More of that on page 17. Now, on page 18 this morning, China Trade Week, an eye-opener for entrepreneurs. Magdalene Wangui was among hundreds of visitors attending the official opening of China Trade Week on Wednesday in Nairobi, wandering through the exhibition hall where Chinese firms displayed an array of products ranging from solar panels to agricultural machinery and automotive parts. Wangui paused frequently to inquire about prices. More of that about the China Trade Exhibition Week is beefed up for you on page 18. Also, construction of Kiambu Farmers Facility kicks off. The facility is aimed at supporting value addition and marketing of produce. Wamatangi said his administration had factored 250 million shillings in the budget. That story is beefed up for you on page 18. Now, let's move on and take a look at the Planet Action this morning. EAC states lack data on wildlife contribution to GDP, team says. EALA committee raises concerns over missing statistics on wildlife conservation's economic impact. The team pushes for coordinated efforts and better data management across member states. Business news this morning on the Standard. Kare warns low tax morale, job cuts to affect revenue collection. Move undermines the government's capacity to fulfill its financial commitments. Experts suggest this could be a symptom that many citizens feel disconnected from the benefits of taxation, which fosters a culture of tax evasion. That story is beefed up for you on page 21. Let's move on and take a look at world news this morning. 10 key developments since October 7th Hamas attack on Israel. Now, more than 41,700 people have been killed since the war broke a year ago. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu vows to destroy Hamas. Now, in Africa, Tunisia votes with Said set for re-election. Voting began in Tunisia's presidential election on Sunday with no real opposition to incumbent Kais Saied, who is widely tipped to win as his most prominent critics are behind bars. That story is beefed up for you on page 23. Now, let's move on swiftly and take a look at sports news on the Standard this morning. We start with golfing. Irungu's lone birdie drives him to podium sport. Now, home of golfer triumphs at the Sea-Link Mombasa course. Mutwi secures victory in Machakos as Devani rules at Nyali. That story is beefed up for you on page 29. Let's move on and take a look at page 30. Bagnia sets example with Japan win to cut gap on Martin. The next leg is the Australian MotoGP at Phillip Island in 2 weeks' time. Martin started from 11th on the grid after crashing in qualifying. That story is beefed up for you on page 30. Now let's move on to page 31. Champs Madrid win, but Carvajal set for surgery. Juventus held at home. Spain defender set for surgery after injury against Villarreal. Juventus drop points at home against Gagliari in Serie A. That story is beefed up for you on page 31. Lastly, on the cover page of the Standard this morning, Manchester United fire another blank as Chelsea held. Manchester United winless run continues to 5 games after barren draw at Aston Villa. Madueke scores as Chelsea come from behind to draw. More of that is beefed up for you on page 32 of the Standard. Let's take a quick break here on the morning momentum, and then we come back with more stories on the Daily Nation. See you on the other side of this broadcast. Don't go away. The best is yet to come.
Je, wewe ni mfanyabiashara katika sekta ya elimu, afya bora, usafiri ama unamiliki kampuni yoyote ile? Ungependa kupata fursa ya kutangaza biashara yako ili kuwafikia wateja zaidi? Usikonde. Runinga ya YOUNIB inakupa fursa ya kupeperusha matangazo kuhusu bidhaa na huduma unazotoa kwa bei nafuu. Kwa maelezo zaidi, wasiliana nasi kupitia nambari za simu 0750344700 ama kupitia barua pepe marketing@younibtv.com. Jinyakulie leo. YOUNIB TV, ever the best.